Hey everybody, this is a dermal regenerator. I built this myself during Next Generation. It was used as a food light as well as a bunch of other things for engineering and so on. So we made some of these for Next Generation, for DS9. I believe there's two of them we made for Voyager, but I'm not quite sure. So when this was made, as I normally do, I usually talk to the prop master, and in this particular case it was Joe Longo during Next Generation. If I remember correctly, this was third season, the first time you see it, but I'm not positive on that. Episodes for me are kind of blend together, so do some of the years, but it's the information I keep in my head for the props themselves are a little more important to me. So I go through and I ask, what do you want it to do? Does it have lights? Do we need to make one? Do we need to make six? How many do we need? What are you going to do with it? Does it have to have lights? As well as, do you need any stunt copies? Now, at any given point, when you're making any prop, you could be asked to make a stunt copy of something. You're like, why would you ever need a stunt copy? Well, because if they throw it at an actor, it has to be made out of rubber or foam or something like that. Okay, so now back to the construction of this. When I built this, as well as a lot of other props for Star Trek, I started off with acrylic and styrene sheets. And as you can see here in the construction, as I turn these pieces over, this is a piece of acrylic, and this is all sheet styrene that's been stacked up, and the edges bondoed up and everything to give it the basic shape with the contour of the two side panels. This is a piece of turned acrylic and then cut on a bandsaw and ground as well. This is a piece of acrylic. The main handle here is acrylic and styrene, just like the other top piece here. But we also use dental acrylic, which is backfilled in here to fill in that gap, just also to give it strength. Because when we're casting these things, you don't want your walls too thin, or when you do cast it that thin, it's very brittle, especially in resins. And we could have done this as a vacuform project, but in general, this didn't lend itself too well to that because we needed to be able to get into different things. As you'll see in the construction here, there are acrylic pegs here and here and holes here and here, because I wanted to, once we did the casting, I could then take it and put it together and it would be almost self-aligning, and it wouldn't be perfect because the bulk piece here would probably shrink a little bit more than the cover piece, but it isn't enough not to use a registration like that, because it made it faster and easier to build them up once we actually made molds and castings. This piece here, once again with the acrylic rods, simply went into these holes and helped things align better. Then we had this piece here. This is the nozzle or tip or whatever you'd like to call it that would fit inside of this piece, and it would have to be cast out of another material. I can't even fit it in there now. It hasn't been in this spot or tooled since the first time we made this for the show. And also this would shrink a lot more depending on which material we use. So it fitting into there, or I can also just sand it a little bit and it'd be fine as well. As far as these pieces here, this was actually the tool, and I don't want to really call it a tool, it's just a pattern for scoring to make the door that fits in here. And it had one screw that would actually screw into the main body to allow the batteries to be put in and out. This actually had a 9-volt battery inside of it. And then it came up to a switch here, which was just a little momentary switch that we had purchased from a surplus store. And then the wiring would come up through a hole that we would drill in later, just like we would drill a hole here for the wires. And then on one side, we had a flip-flop circuit that would bounce back and forth. I believe red and green. Now, originally, when this was first built, this had just a acrylic front on it and an incandescent in here, because LEDs, like white LEDs or anything else, really were not something that were available at all, period. At this point in time, I believe if there was a blue LED, it was $1,500. So it wasn't something we were going to do for an episodic TV show. So this one side here had the LEDs. These are the panels that would go, the detail panels. These are patterns for those. And I'm not really sure where all this fits on there at this moment. I would have to look at reference photos. But basically, these panels were on this side and this side at the same time. And generally speaking, we would cut these out for each casting we did, only specifically because it would reduce the amount of bubbles that we would get in castings, which would make it easier to keep everything as clean as possible. Now, some of you are going to go, well, why didn't you have it laser cut? Well, because laser cutting at that time was also exceedingly expensive. Just like 3D printing now at this time and date is relatively cheap to do, and it would be great, except that generally speaking, this prop probably, if I remember correctly, was a 3-day turnaround for next generation, which means that this was made, we made a mold, and then we did 2 copies of this for the show that were matching in a 3-day turnaround time. So it doesn't lend itself to doing 3-dimensional drawings and so on. In general, and this isn't every case, but in general, many prop makers could probably make something like this faster in real life than you could draw it and print it in 3D. Now, that's not necessarily always true, but nowadays, yes, a lot of production designers actually are drawing things in 3D, which is great, and then handing it to you. But in this particular case, this would lend itself great for 3D printing, but not in the time frame that we had for the actual episode. And this was drawn by Rick Sternbach. This is, once again, another piece of history that I have in my collection. I'm enjoying doing these videos, so I'm hoping you're enjoying watching them. I appreciate your comments, and if you have any more comments specifically about this or any other prop that I'm showing you, please put it in the comments, and I'll try and get to them as quickly as I can. As I've said before, I will be doing some tutorial videos and other things as time goes on. Thanks a lot for watching.